Okay, so here we are. So again, let me thank you for attending our workshop today and for contributing to our research project, Memory Across Borders, dealing with the legacy of disputed territories. As some of you will know, the genesis of this project can be traced back to discussions at the University of Bath among colleagues who were interested in questions of memory in an interdisciplinary context. And a number of those originally involved in formulating the bid, and some of whom are no longer at Bath, it has to be said, had key concerns around the question of memory, broadly speaking, in international relations. So for those of you familiar with the discipline of memory studies in academic research, its focus has been to examine the ways in which groups of people make sense of a past understood as both shared and intrinsically linked with their sense of identity. And we talked about this at length yesterday in our theoretical discussion. While much early research in memory studies operated with a certain methodological nationalism, as it's been called, being primarily interested in the negotiation of memory within the political and cultural space of the nation, in the last 15 to 20 years or so, scholars have increasingly called on memory studies to move beyond the national frame. Now, there are obviously many ways to do this, but the question of memory's role in international relations and conflict over borders remains a relatively underexplored topic. And in some ways, this is surprising, given that memory is arguably a key driver of conflict. Collective understandings of the past also express collective interests, shape perceptions of threat, teach us how to distinguish between self and other, and, most importantly for this project, demarcate the territory on which the history of our own group took place. Across a range of disciplines that concern themselves with conflict, there is a recognition that there is a close relationship between constructions of space, particularly in terms of territory, and shared understandings of the past, and that the potential for conflict and violence between groups is linked to those shared understandings of the past and its territory. As political scientists have observed, for example, the link between territory and political violence is well established, as is the relationship between such conflict and the mobilization of symbolic claims to territory, including historical claims. As McDowell and Braniff note, where ownership and control of territory is in dispute between different groups, I quote, controlling perceptions of what happened and what did not happen within that place is of the utmost importance to groups vying for power and territory. Now, as you'll see from the slide here, we have our partners in this project that we gradually put together as a network to consider some of these problems. Just to let you know who they are, if you're not already familiar, the project really started at the University of Bath, but then sort of snowballed through a series of personal contacts to include the Institute of Sociology at the University of Warsaw, the National Academy of Sciences of the Republic of Armenia, and Foreman Christian College in Lahore in Pakistan. And we also brought on board two civil society organizations, two NGOs, Educational and Cultural Bridges in Armenia, and Fundacja Pograniczna here in Poland, and we'll have representatives of those organizations to speak to you later on today. So our perception was then that there was certainly more work to do in the field of memory studies relating to questions of territoriality, memory and conflict. And that feeling was reinforced by our discussions with those partners that we've just had on the last slide. So we went through a process with those partners of formulating the bid, but also, it has to be said, reformulating the bid. It was accepted on its third attempt by the European Commission, so persistence does pay off. It became very clear to us that the great potential of using Marie Curie RISE funding, which is exchange funding, was that it would allow us to work very closely with cultural practitioners, civil society organizations, and to kind of move beyond the boundaries of academia. That wasn't meant to do that. There we go. So in the discussions with the potential partners, it became clear that the issue of disputed territory offered both an urgent real-world problem in terms of their potential for perpetuating conflict and a fruitful case study for researchers interested in memory in the context of international relations and disputed borders. All of the regions we identified as areas for productive field work, namely Central and Eastern Europe, South Asia and the South Caucasus, have experienced conflicts over disputed territory. And in the case of Pakistan and Armenia, our two key countries in their respective regions, these conflicts are still very much live conflicts. Although we do not want to reduce these conflicts to questions of competing memories of the territories in question, it's not the only cause. The origins and drivers of hostility are obviously complex. Our main aim is to more fully understand the role of memory in those contexts and to find examples of best practice in terms of the peaceful management of such memories. Now, academic researchers and practitioners in the field of peace and reconciliation can be suspicious of memory. Some have argued that in certain post-conflict situations, it may be necessary to simply put aside the past in order to move forward. Others have argued that the so-called restorying of a situation, to use Lederach's term, can provide a shared understanding of the past that promotes peaceful coexistence. However, the relationship between the establishment of a consensual form of remembering and the possibility of non-conflictual relations is one which, at least in the context of the European Union, has come under increasing scrutiny in recent years. In particular, the so-called cosmopolitan memory consensus within the EU, which has focused on the memory of victims of war and dictatorship in the 20th century as the basis for European peace, has come under increasing pressure by those who wish to return to a more antagonistic form of memory that stresses competing interests of national groups. Consensual memories are open to attack by those who claim that they involve the suppression or omission of the specific historical experience of particular groups, and for failing to recognize the specificities of those experiences. New forms of nationalism and populism have sought to associate such consensus with a supposedly out-of-touch elite that has failed to listen to the voice of the people and its allegedly more authentic memories. As Anna will explain later in much more detail, and in the paper that you've all had access to, in the Horizon 2020 research project, Unsettling Remembering and Social Cohesion in Transnational Europe, which I participated in with Anna, we sought to understand the potential of differing memory models, the cosmopolitan, the antagonistic, and the agonistic, in productively managing memories of conflict. Anna has played a leading role alongside her co-author Hans Lauger Hansen of Aarhus University in formulating the notion of agonistic memory, which is defined in terms of a conflictual consensus, drawing on the work of political theorist Chantal Mouffe, and again of which more later. But very simply put, agonistic memory asks whether it is possible for groups with differing understandings of the past, which express their identities and interests, to live with each other or alongside each other without the need to impose a consensus about the past. The DisTerrMem project offers us a new and challenging context in which to explore these ideas, which up until now have only been explored in the European frame. So this leads us really to the research problem that I've outlined here in this slide, and which really summarizes what I've just been saying. So we've identified, and I think it's widely accepted, that there is a crucial relationship between memory and disputed territory. And obviously then that competing memories of disputed territory can fuel conflict. As I've said, reconciliation and peace building often seeks to either put aside the past for the sake of the future or perhaps create a shared memory. But we are suggesting that that may not always be a productive way to approach the situation. So our question then becomes, how can competing memories be managed in a non-antagonistic or even in an agonistic way? And as I say, Anna will be thinking more about that in her talk. So the design of the project recognizes that the development of memory cultures and indeed the politics of memory around disputed territories takes place in a context defined by multiple actors operating at different levels. We aim to focus our research on case studies across three regions already mentioned, while at the same time taking into account the role played in the management of memories of disputed territory by civil society activists, cultural practitioners, nation states, and regional organizations. And as you can see here in this diagram. So I'm just going to take a few moments to say some words about these three levels of analysis. Turning first to civil society organizations. In recent decades, civil society groups have challenged dominant representations of national community and established alternative commemorative practices. New translocal and transnational grassroots practices of memory and commemoration, relying on both social interaction and digital media, have allowed, as Kunstmann says, traumatic memories to become open to engagement and active negotiation. In parallel with this development, histories from below are now increasingly perceived to be just as important as official or mainstream histories. The demands of various groups for recognition of their memory and history and for the reparation of past wrongdoings have not everywhere called into question the legitimacy of the nation state, provided neither these groups nor their demands are linked to territory. There is an important difference, however, in the case of sub-state territorial identities. When a group identity is linked to territory, there is more at stake for national sovereignty. If group identities are territorial, conflict can lead to the dissolution of the state in the ultimate case. So, for instance, in Europe, we can think of Yugoslavia or Czechoslovakia. In such cases, the social and cultural practices produced by civil society activists can range from those that reinforce national stereotypes and mental boundaries on the one hand, to those that promote multicultural or post-national imaginings on the other. In this project, however, our focus will be on the ways in which these actors can bring together people across the mental and emotional or physical borders in order to construct multi-perspectival historical narratives. We will investigate the work of a range of civil society groups on both sides of the borders studied, as well as among diasporic communities. In particular, the active role of women and younger generations in changing identity codes will be explored. And I think that's also worth mentioning if you're looking at the maps here, that yes, we are focusing on Poland, Armenia and Pakistan, but we are interested in their relationships with the wider region as well. Cultural practitioners increasingly recognize, to get on to cultural practitioners now. Cultural practitioners increasingly recognize the ways in which their work, especially situated in community and cross-community settings, can have a positive role in mediating between different groups in such a way as to develop empathy and break down stereotypes. Equally, practitioners in the field of reconciliation and conflict management appreciate how artistic practice can open up a space in which alternative futures can be imagined. Cultural practice potentially allows those who were previously in conflict to express their own trauma, as well as to recognize those from the other side as subject to traumatic experience. Furthermore, the experience of cultural practice need not be verbal, which gives it the advantage of potentially bypassing discourse that often only re-expresses entrenched positions. The project will explore how cultural practitioners can promote plural memories of disputed territory, finding ways to engage communities in remembering across borders in the name of peaceful coexistence. In addition, the project will examine from an interdisciplinary perspective the role of such cultural production in the work of civil society organizations and NGOs that seek to promote non-antagonistic memories across borders. Here again, we will seek out examples of best practice across the case study countries. Moving to the nation state, issues of memory are obviously very closely linked to nation states' identities. In many relatively young states, memories of a shared past play a pivotal role in the process of nation building. The history of shared suffering is regularly mentioned in official narratives with the expectation of making people rally round the flag. While the memory of the past often shapes certain state identities, states themselves frequently influence the way memories of past events are fostered. States have the power to employ narratives based on particular memories to promote democratic pluralism within the country's territory. That, in turn, underscores the power of memory-related dynamics in starting a move towards change. Similarly, states can collaborate with their neighbours to promote non-antagonistic memories. This can be achieved by exploring ways to move forward and changing perceptions and building bridges. We therefore want to explore how states can provide and promote non-antagonistic versions of memory. So the final piece of our puzzle are the regional organisations, which are playing an increasingly visible role in mediating border disputes and facilitating cooperation between borderland communities. Due to their beyond-the-nation-state status, as Delaunty has put it, they cast themselves as fair brokers detached from states' national narratives. The International Court of Justice has become the primary legal venue for resolving territorial disputes, but its verdicts, even when genuinely accepted by government representatives, represent only the first step in the promotion of non-antagonistic memory on the ground. This is where regional organisations have opportunities to step in and play a significant role in engaging memories of the past and transforming them in the process. Consequently, we will explore the influence of relevant regional organisations such as the EU or the South Asian Association for Regional Cooperation in the management of memories of disputed territories. So this slide, as you can see, kind of puts the whole thing together. You can see the multiple levels of analysis there: civil society, cultural practitioners, the neighbouring states or nation states, as I've just been calling them, and the regional organisations that we're hoping to study as well. I'm just going to finally say something about the interdisciplinary nature of the project. So as you can see, what we are intending to do is bring together partners who have complementary disciplinary and methodological knowledge in order to address the problems I've just been talking about. And what we really want to do at the end of this, as I've said here, is to create a new model for analysing and managing these competing memories of disputed territories at these various levels, to apply that model to the analysis of selected memory projects and initiatives, which we're hoping to identify in the course of the coming months, and ultimately to promote best practice to policymakers, to civil society groups, but also to cultural practitioners. Okay. So these are then the key aims of the project. And you can see also on the right-hand side all of the different disciplinary expertise that the various partners are bringing to the project. So memory studies is obviously key, but we have political scientists. We are working with NGO partners who are cultural practitioners and also civil society activists, and who are active in the field of peace and reconciliation. We have international relations scholars. So we have all this expertise that is coming together in-house. But one of the main purposes of today, really, is to engage with people outside of the project, cultural practitioners. I don't think we have any policymakers here today, but cultural practitioners and civil society organisations are definitely people we want to be having a dialogue with. The aim of the project is not for us to go away and tell civil society and cultural practitioners how to do things, or even to tell policymakers how to do things. It is supposed to be a dialogue with those people external to the project so that we can learn from them as much as we can tell them something about what they're doing. Okay? So this is the official summary of what we're supposed to be doing. It says DisTerrMem will provide an integrated program of training and mobility opportunities for researchers. So we have a lot of researchers moving between different institutions, different regions. And they will work together to develop a novel, transnational, interdisciplinary and multi-level approach to the problem of managing competing memories of disputed territories. And as I keep sort of emphasising, what we're really about, apart from producing academic publications and policy briefings, is to identify and promote examples of best practice at all of these levels, which will be relevant to our stakeholder communities. And one of the things I hope will come out of today is that we can learn more about how we can go about doing that most effectively. So thank you for listening.
It's quite an ambitious project, and we have 3 years to apparently do this. So David excellently summarised the main aims and the kind of origins of the projects and the partners involved. But as the project coordinator, I've also got to think about how we manage that over the 3 years and because the great strength of the project is that we have lots of disciplines, we have a range of organisations, practitioners, academic, which is great, but also think about how we can encourage this cooperation within the 3 years at the same time as meeting all of our outputs and needs of the project and meet the funders' needs too. And as David said, we have... Could we have the screen on, please, for the PowerPoint? Thank you. So the funding that we have for this is largely based around facilitating secondments. So it's to encourage people from NGOs to go to academic institutions and people from academic institutions to visit NGOs. So these secondments are based around 30 days is the shortest you can do. You can do 2 months or 3 months if you want, but 30 days is the very minimum. So it's quite it's a great opportunity to spend time in a different place and with different organisations and have that kind of crossover in terms of experience and knowledge and try to facilitate that. What we do have to think about is how that fits within the needs of the project. So this might be more beneficial for researchers on the project, but it still gives a clear outline to others that are here too. So year one of the project, we've had quite a lot of secondments already, which has been really great. And I think people have got quite a lot out of them. We've had blogs on our website, if anyone's interested, about reading what people have been up to while they've been on secondment. Myself personally spent a month in Armenia, which was just amazing. And the idea of the first year is that the major output that we do from this is producing literature reviews and everyone contributing to that through their different work packages and work package leads. So yeah, it's really great, I think, those 30 days to have that kind of headspace to be able to think and work on the project. This is just some of the kind of outputs that have been expected from the first year. We're making good progress. A lot of it is just about starting up the project. We're now into the virtual summer school. Well, I suppose summer has come to Warsaw, so it is quite an appropriate name. Also, we've got the stakeholder workshop, which is today. So these events are really, really important, as David said, for engaging people outside of the project that we really want to have that dialogue with. We also have a first internal conference coming up in Bath in early November, where we'll be able to discuss things like the literature review. And also, importantly, we need to find 8 case studies to research for the project. It works out as 2 per work package, so we really need to start thinking about that. And again, we would love to hear from practitioners and people in the field about potential case studies that we can use and explore throughout the project. And in January, so to wrap up the first year, we're expected to upload our literature reviews to the project website. Okay, so this leads us into year 2. And throughout, so it's quite a busy year. So at this point, we're meant to start thinking about the interdisciplinary and also the multi-level theoretical approach. And we do have to write a report as well based on that. Like I said, we need to think about the case studies, and we really, by the second year, need to be starting that research, because I think in the grant it says kind of towards nearer the third year, but we just won't have enough time if we follow that. So we really need to start thinking about this now and begin that research on the case studies. And again, the secondments are that opportunity to be able to do that. So yeah, here's just some of the things we need to tick off. We need to do another training needs assessment. So again, it would be great to hear from people about what kind of skills they would like to develop and what kind of training they would appreciate through the project. Already we need to think about the midterm meeting, and it feels like we've just started the research, but so yeah, we have the midterm meeting in Warsaw on the 23rd of March. We also have a second virtual summer school and second stakeholder engagement workshop. So again, it would be great to hear from stakeholders and external organisations about whether they would like to continue the engagement and other ideas that they have to people we can reach out to. We also have a second internal conference, which will be held at FCC in Pakistan. And again, we can beam that out virtually so people can get engaged even if they're not in Pakistan. And we need to also finish the methodological and theoretical report, but I would suggest we need to do that way before January 2021. Okay, and finally, to wrap up year 3, again, on secondments, we still have these going throughout until the end of the project. So this is time that we can use to complete the research and also write it up for publications. And as we spoke about yesterday, we need a minimum of 8 co-authored and comparative articles. And also, again, because our research is supposed to be, the intention is that it's very practical based, we need to also produce research briefs that will be useful for policymakers and people working in the field too. So yeah, by the final year, we need to start thinking about dissemination. And like I said, that's through publications. And also we have an international conference at Borderlands, and also policy briefs too. So yeah, this is kind of a brief summary and overview, and any ideas on stakeholders we can engage with and those kind of skills that people want to develop along the way, please let us know. And also, we do have a lovely handbook that's online, so those of you that are in the project, feel free to look through that for more information. And everyone else, if you are, I've spelt that wrong, it should be with one S. We do have a lovely website, which is DisTerrMem.eu with one S, which has got lots of information about the project partners and the project as well. So I'll finish there because I'm just concerned about time. Okay.